how many? Raise your hand if you are if you're a member of a DAO. Raise your hand if you're a member of a DAO. So, okay, about a third of us are members of DAOs. Very cool. Anybody shout out what DAO you're in? What DAO are you in? A new DAO that's about to be started. Yeah. What about you? What about you? What DAO are you in? No, not a DAO. Okay, maybe it's not a DAO. All right. Does anybody want to rep a real DAO? What's it called? CT? City DAO. Oh, City DAO. Is that the city coin, or is that a different project? Different project. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, Rug Radio. Yeah. It's got a DAO started, right? Yeah. Cool. Any other DAOs over here on this side? What you got? Raw DAO. Raw DAO. We're going to talk about that one a little bit. Any others? Yeah. What DAO are you in? Unicorn DAO. All right. We can talk about the unicorns today. All right. So I'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Jonas Lamis, and I am currently, my day job is I am one of the 4 co-founders and the chief operating officer of Quantum Art. We have a booth inside there. We're a platform for minting photography and now adding digital art. But that's my day job. At night, I am a DAO maxi. I have been deep down the DAO rabbit hole over the last couple of years. I think I'm probably a member of 7 or 8 different DAOs. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are ugly. I'm going to share some of my secrets about DAOs and how they relate to NFTs and where this all is potentially going, and what some of the risks are for those of you who want to create your own DAO. So to help me on my DAO storyline here, we have 4 cool cats who are going to talk about their different DAO experiences. We're going to talk about, and these names, these are not like industry standard names. These are names that I've made up for these different types of DAOs. But we're going to talk about acquisition DAOs, curation DAOs, Benefactor, or maybe some people call them Dictator DAOs, and then expert DAOs. So those are the 4 primary types of DAOs in the NFT space that I've witnessed. Again, we're all kind of making this up as we go. It's all such a brand new space. I think there's one new kind of DAO that's emerging. I don't really have slides on it, but I think there's a membership, like a utility token DAO model that's coming pretty soon as well. Okay, so we're going to dive into the different pros and cons on these DAO types. The first one I want to talk about is kind of the headliner one, the acquisition DAO. And these slides are on my Twitter profile if anybody wants to grab them off there. I'll pin them to the top after this. But probably the most well-known DAO across the NFT space is called Flamingo DAO. And Flamingo DAO is what I would call an acquisition DAO. I am very fortunate to be one of the 67 members of Flamingo DAO. I joined at the very beginning when the price was cheap. Now the price is ridiculously expensive to get in it because Flamingo has acquired over the last 18 months, about $1 billion worth of NFT assets. And we did that by buying them cheap and holding them. We were purchasing mass buys, 300 plus CryptoPunks from the devs back in the day. We started minting squiggles on day one when Art Blocks launched and collected all of the Art Blocks stuff. Flamingo DAO is really the prototypical legally structured acquisition DAO. So what an acquisition DAO is it's a shared bank account, if you will, where a number of different members pool funds so that they can acquire, in this case, collections of NFTs. Generally, acquisition DAOs go broad, and the funds that are pooled can become very substantial. Now, an acquisition DAO, in the last presentation, there was a question at the end about the SEC and securities issues and all those kinds of things. This is a major issue for DAOs as well, because if you just get a bunch of people together and they all throw some ETH into a multi-sig wallet, and then you start investing out of that, and then you start buying and selling, and maybe you issue a token that you give to your members, Depending on your jurisdiction, that could be really very much a gray area space that's yet to be figured out if it's going to be legal, especially in the United States where I'm based. So the top acquisition DAOs have created a legal structure that works for them. And in fact, there's a company called Tribute Labs, which has been the birther of many of the top acquisition DAOs. Tribute Labs is a corporation out of the US that created a legal structure for people to come together to pool funds for these DAOs. The truth is, it's not very much a crypto, it doesn't very much follow the crypto ethos at the end of the day because it's an LLC in the US. So they create a corporation. That corporation, that LLC for Flamingo, for example, can only have 99 members maximum. Otherwise, you start hitting these securities rules. Those 99 members are all accredited investors. Again, this is another term that the US government cares about. It means that you are able to prove to the US government that you have made enough money in the past year, or you have enough assets that you know what you're doing in investing. And it's a really antiquated rule from back in the 1930s that needs to change, and there's a lot of efforts going on from the crypto space and from kind of the crowdfunding space in general to try and get the government to change their regulatory regime related to securities law, especially for smaller investors. We'll see how that happens. Nothing really has moved that much on it yet. But if you want to build a big acquisition DAO, a great place to start is with a framework like Tribute Labs. Alex mentioned Unicorn DAO. This is a new DAO that is spinning up in the same model as Flamingo. Unicorn DAO is focused on collecting NFTs that were made by women and LGBTQ plus non-binary people, a space that's been really underrepresented in the NFT space so far. Unicorn DAO, if you're interested in joining, is currently enrolling new people, and I think that the entry price, just so you don't have a shock on it, there is a 50 ETH entry to become a member in Unicorn DAO. So if that floats your boat, go to unicorndao.xyz, I believe, and there's an enrollment process ongoing there. So that's what we have going on with the acquisition DAOs. Now, the next kind of DAO, well, here's a few examples. We talked about Flamingo DAO. It's now over $1 billion in assets. I made these slides a little while ago, about 6 months ago, and a lot has changed, I guess, on valuations. Pleaser DAO is another really cool acquisition DAO. A number of investors have come together to collect kind of iconic and historic NFTs. They bought the Snowden Papers NFT. They bought the Ix Tour art piece for $2.5 million, I think, the largest sale of a female black artist in the NFT space at that point in time. Party DAO is a cool product that lets anybody kind of spin up an acquisition DAO on a bespoke basis to acquire one specific piece. And when the party comes together and everybody pools their funds and they buy the piece, then the piece gets tokenized through something like fractional.art, so everybody owns a piece of it. It's a lot more gray area than the legal structures of the previous ones, but it's kind of in the same genre. So the next kind of DAO that exists is what I'm calling an expert DAO. And an expert DAO is a lot like an acquisition DAO, except it's focused on one project primarily. So if you have a bunch of people who are really crazy about squiggles, then you create Squiggle DAO, right? And in fact, I'm one of the founders of Squiggle DAO because I was really crazy about squiggles. And with Squiggle DAO, what we did is we had 4 guys who were all big Squiggle fans, and we decided, hey, let's create a shared Squiggle vault. And so we all contributed some of our squiggles to the Squiggle vault with a multi-sig on top of it. And then we said, okay, let's issue a governance token to ourselves so that we can vote on how we're going to manage Squiggle DAO. And so we created the Squig token and we issued it to ourselves. And then we opened it up to anybody else who wanted to contribute a squiggle to our Squiggle vault. And we now have over 300 squiggles in the Squiggle vault and 300 different people who are holding our governance token. Now this, I am not advocating this model. This is a lot more risky model than what I was talking about with the LLC structure, right? It's got all kinds of hair on it from a regulatory perspective. We don't have a corporate structure. We don't have the protection of accredited investors. This is on the far opposite end of kind of what Flamingo has going on. It's a lot more degen from a structured perspective. Maybe if you're not in the US, it might be a little better to start one of those. I'm just stupid and decided to join in as an American person. We'll see what happens. I like testing the waters on some of this stuff. The good news is, at least for now, like, we got lots of squiggles in our vault that can back up anything that we've done if anyone comes knocking. We, in fact, did recently raise an investment into Squiggle DAO from a venture capitalist. They put True Ventures invested $8 million into Squiggle DAO, primarily for us to buy more squiggles. So the floor has been swept numerous times already. Yeah, so that's kind of the expert DAO model. It can look a lot like an ETF. It does. One of the biggest problems we have at Squiggle DAO is that we don't really have a leadership team that's focused on driving Squiggle DAO forward as much as you would if you were a corporation. Right? With a corporation, you have defined roles. That's the CEO, that's the head of marketing and things like that. In a DAO like this, and it's kind of a problem for all of them, you kind of have to feel your way around it. With the governance token voting, it becomes sometimes a little bit harder to make decisions and to rally people to solve the specific problems. And so with Squiggle, we have Greg, who's one of the 4 co-founders. He's our chief squiggler. You know, he's kind of running the show there. And he's been, we've been attracting community members to take different roles in the DAO. And now that we have some funding from an external source, we can start paying people to act on different things to move the DAO forward. A couple other examples. We talked about Squiggle DAO. Nouns DAO, you guys ever heard of this project? Really fun project, but also really crazy in the sense that it's almost like a hedge fund built on NFTs. So what Nouns DAO does is it has this little PFP character. Here's an example, this ugly guy right here. This is a noun. Every day, the noun smart contract mints 1 new noun. It creates 1 new noun per day, kind of a randomized guy that looks like this. And then that noun goes up for auction every day. There's 1 noun for sale, and then people bid on buying that noun. They go for anywhere from 50 to 150 ETH every day, it seems like. And then all of that money that was just paid to acquire that noun goes into the Noun DAO treasury and is managed by the holders of the nouns. So your purchase of a noun is now your entry into a controlling stake in the Noun DAO treasury. The Noun DAO treasury now, this data is old, but there's been 260 nouns, I think, that have been minted over the last 260 days. And I think they have over 22,000 ETH in their treasury now. And they're trying to figure out how to spend that treasury. I think, like I said, I kind of call it a hedge fund. Made up of the nouns, I guess, because they have this tremendous purchasing power. Who knows what they're going to do with it? Flamingo, I know, has acquired like 6 or 7 nouns, but it'll be really interesting to see how they take that money and put it to use. So far, it's just been donations to different projects, different nonprofits, but it could be used to acquire some PFP project or something. It's a real interesting play. So that's our expert DAO. The third type of DAO, Benefactor DAOs. Benefactor DAOs is the pleasant term. I also call them Dictator DAOs. A Dictator DAO is a DAO that is started because, well, you might not want to, I don't know if the founders would say this, but I believe a lot of the Dictator DAOs are started because somebody held a bunch of a liquid type of some kind of NFT and they wanted to get liquidity for it, and so they invited all their friends in to own a part of what they have, right? And so if you hold a bunch of Bored Apes, you might create a Bored Apes DAO yourself and then invite people to give you ETH, and then you issue a governance token around it. One of the best examples of this is Fingerprints DAO. Do you guys know Fingerprints DAO? So Fingerprints DAO was created by a really nice guy, Luis, who had a bunch of autoglyphs. Autoglyphs are this generative art project that was created by the creators of CryptoPunks. Very expensive art, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars per piece. And he ended up collecting a bunch of those, and so he decided to create a DAO around his autoglyphs collection. So he put all his autoglyphs into a pool, and he created a token, and then he let people pay him ETH to buy that token, so they now have a controlling stake in this thing. And since then, they've been growing. They have def beefs, they have IKBs, they've launched a couple of their own projects. I think Fingerprints has gone from being a Dictator DAO when it launched to being more of a general acquisition DAO focused on generative art at this point in time. Whale Vault, I think, is a similar case for those of you who've been following that saga. They had, one collector had a huge collection, and then he tokenized it, and he started giving away the tokens to people, and then they created a marketplace for it. And I don't think it's all worked out all that well at this point in time, but it's an example of that. All right, and so then we have our last type of DAO that I've been tracking, and it's what I'm calling a Curation DAO. And a Curation DAO is like a nonprofit DAO, or it's like a museum DAO. This is a new type of DAO that's springing up from collectors who have a lot of art already, and they want to create a public space for that art to exist without there necessarily having to be a financial return on the end of it for the DAO members. So one of the new curation DAOs that has sprung up is called Museo, museo.xyz. Started from a lot of people who came out of Flamingo and artists as well, and anyone can donate a piece of art to be considered to become part of the collection of Museo. The current collectors who have donated pieces have the governance tokens, and so we all vote on what other art pieces we want to add to the museum. But there's no vision of a financial payout at the end of the day. It's more like, let's use this to create museum spaces in cryptovoxels and elsewhere around the world, and create a home for really cool art. Mint Fund is doing that as well, and I think this is a space we're going to see more and more of the attention going as people start worrying less about the securitization of pieces and more about the public art aspect of them over time. So those are my 4 examples of DAO types. I would say the 5th example that we're starting to see now is structures that are involving membership tokens that people are acquiring in order to be able to participate in either physical spaces and IRL spaces or in exclusive opportunities. Now, whether or not these become DAOs or they just become projects that are run by a team remains to be seen, but I think it's an area that I'm tracking now that I think is going to have a lot of growth here in 2022. So that's my pitch. I will open it up to questions. See if anybody has any DAO ideas that they want to discuss or issues with what's going on. Yes, sir. Wait, here comes the microphone.
Just a numerical question on the financial incentives. So let's say there's a DAO that has a vault, this noun DAO, for instance, yeah, and let's say it's worth 98 ETH. I bring in another noun, let's say it's worth 2 ETH, so the combined is now 100. So it gives me 2% of the 100. Let's say now the entire vault drops in value 50%. It's now worth 50. But let's say this individual noun is individually, let's say, still 2 ETH worth. What happens?
Yeah, well, I think what's going on with Noun DAO is really interesting in the sense that when the market was really pumping last summer, fall, these nouns were starting to sell for 120, 150, 200 ETH. Some of them went for as much every day, right? So I didn't buy any at that point in time, but somebody acquired a noun for 200 ETH, and their 200 ETH goes into the pool. They still only have 1 vote, right? Now on the secondary, you might be able to pick up a noun for 30 or 40 ETH on occasion. Somebody's going to fire sell theirs. You buy one of those, and you still have the same weighted vote as that person who put 200 ETH in, right? So there's definitely an arbitrage opportunity associated with it. Now the question will be, can the nounders, as they call themselves, ever summon the voting power to distribute that pool of 22,000 ETH out to themselves? If they do decide to do that, that's a big securities issue. but they have to kind of figure out the architecture that they want to move forward with that. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just wanted to come back on the fractionalized ownership. You mentioned it in one of the slides. Are you aware of any example of a DAO using fractionalized ownership that was actually successful? It sounds to me that it's very difficult to set up, and then the governance is also an issue, liquidity as well.
Yeah.
If you just want to elaborate on that, thank you.
Yeah, sure. So Samo mentioned that he's a member of a DAO called the Raw DAO, R-A-W. Have you seen that one before? So the Raw DAO is a DAO that's focused on collecting photography. And RAW, I guess, is the picture format that digital photographers can use. And the way that the Raw DAO got started was through a fractional model. The founder of the Raw DAO, I think, Samo, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the founder of the Raw DAO, who was the same guy who started the Fingerprints DAO, had acquired a photograph from Justin Aversano, who created the Twin Flames photography set, who also happens to be my co-founder on Quantum. But regardless of that, Justin had this photograph from the Twin Flame set that Luis had acquired, and it's a special one within the set. And they took that photograph and they fractionalized it through fractional.art, if I'm not mistaken. And they sold those fractional tokens to people with the notion that if you own these tokens, they're going to be utility tokens into the DAO. So all the ETH that was raised from the sale of those fractional tokens went into the treasury of the Raw DAO, and all of the pieces, all the fractional pieces became the voting tokens for the Raw DAO. And the Raw DAO now has a treasury. Samo, do you have any idea how much it is? It's like several thousand ETH, 2,000-3,000 ETH, that came primarily from the sale of that fractional piece. But then subsequent to that, then they've also sold tokens directly to people who want to join it. So it was used to jumpstart the treasury. Yeah.
Hello, thank you, great presentation. I was wondering, because you mentioned the legal side of the DAOs in the US and also the gray zones, how would the acquisitions between these DAOs work? Would it be like a business to business? Would it be on the gray side if one DAO was to acquire another, or assets of another DAO? Would it have to be on the legal side or the Web3
So
side?
that's a great question. One DAO acquiring another DAO or assets acquiring it. Like I can say as a member of Flamingo DAO, because we have a legal structure in place and because we have accredited investors, we can go acquire anything we want. And we can do it in a construct that it'll be okay for us from a risk perspective. So if the Raw DAO wanted to close out its assets, Flamingo DAO could come in and be the acquirer of that and just roll it into our portfolio. Now, if Squiggle DAO and Raw DAO wanted to partner up, neither of which have a corporate structure, then I don't think you're really creating more of a chaotic setup. You're still just kind of having the same level of risk in one entity instead of two. That would be my guess. Yeah.
So in the end, you think a legal solution to a DAO is necessary?
I'm optimistic that we're going to get past that and be able to move to a more flexible model of not having to have some government bless the structure that you want to work with for your collective model. But I think I have no idea what's going to happen in the US or elsewhere, and if there's going to be a crackdown or if people are just going to, figure out a way to adopt it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Last one. All right. How about right up here in the front? Yeah, go ahead.
I have two questions.
Now you only get one.
All right.
Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit more about the communication on DAOs and the governance? Like which tools you use? Is it people on Discord just chatting and Zoom calling? Just how is the rhythm of the governance?
Yeah, so governance tools, really important topic. We generally use a combination of Discord, and then we use like Discourse, which is a different platform that is used for like structured proposal making. And then we use the snapshot.org for voting mechanisms. You connect your wallet and you can do sign a gasless transaction for voting on Snapshot. And then Snapshot has a number of plugins that tie to the multi-sig wallet, to Gnosis Safe if you want. And so you can kind of tie all those pieces together. I know there are several teams that are working on DAO tooling. I don't remember who they are off the top of my head other than Tribute, but there are some good DAO tooling coming along. Yeah. All right, and one more here real quick, and then we'll be done. Yeah, last one.
Hey, thank you for all the information. So currently I'm in a DAO who's trying to buy a basketball team.
Okay. What's it called?
It's Kraushaus. The aim is to buy an NBA team, but now we're exploring opportunities in Europe to try out how that management would work. So there's like 4,000 people in the DAO, and there is a governing team, and there are stewards, and there are like bounty hunters.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Contributors. But the decision-making process is fairly complex because it's a living organism, has multiple layers of different departments. So there's like experts who knows how to manage, and there are governance token holders.
Yeah.
So in your experience with DAOs, how does that work, the decision-making between the experts and the members?
Yeah, right. So like Unicorn DAO that Alex was mentioning has started a structured model where they have a curator team that they've appointed to make the initial decisions about what the DAO should buy. Like anyone can make a suggestion, the curator team will curate it, and then they'll put it out for proposal to the general membership. It's different than what we do in Flamingo, where it's kind of more of a free-for-all. I think that same model is probably going to materialize where you're going to give the experts some degree of autonomy to be a council that makes those decisions with the ratification of a larger DAO. Certainly DAOs can turn into governments at the end of the day, and you can have different voting structures and different chambers and things like that. The risk is the more that you concentrate decision making into a small team, the more it seems like a corporation, and then the more the government is going to say you're running a corporation and those people who are benefiting from it are really securities holders rather than everyone collaborating together. So it's an interesting challenge for sure. Awesome, thank you everybody.